Hi, I'm Feather Windwalker, and I'm here on the Essential Coaching Skills podcast with our usual host, Doug O'Brien, to talk to him about the havening techniques. Stay tuned.
You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important.
Hey, Feather. What are you doing here? This is my podcast.
Hi, Doug. Well, I'm so excited that you asked me to come and interview with you on the podcast of Essential Coaching Skills about havening techniques, because you know how excited I am about havening techniques.
I do, yes. Yes, and that is exactly why I asked you here, because we have that in common. We're both havening techniques practitioners, and I'll be teaching a course in this will be a forever podcast. So I want to say I'm going to be teaching one soon, because it was probably last year by the time people listen to this. But nevertheless, I do teach classes in havening, and I've gotten a lot of questions as to like why and what is it all about. And I just thought, why don't you just ask me some questions and I'll answer them the best I can, and we'll just take it from there.
Yeah. So what was it that led you to be curious and interested in learning yet another technique after being a master trainer in NLP and Ericksonian hypnosis hypnotherapist?
Wow, that's actually a really good question. It's funny, I didn't actually plan on doing that. I didn't have a desire to learn something new. I just thought, I'm curious, I'm open. A friend of mine told me about it, and I said, well, that sounds interesting. Anything I can learn about that? And he said, well, there's an intro coming up. Why don't you come to this? So I did. I went to this intro, and it was amazing. Have I told you about that before? That's the first time I ever saw havening demonstrated?
Well, I always love hearing the story.
Oh, so I have told you. Okay. That's a yes. I have told you before. But I will tell you. I will tell it again. So yeah, so I went to this demonstration, and I will admit I was skeptical. I was skeptical about havening, because I've tried things that are similar to it, and people are aware, I think probably at this point, that havening grew out of Dr. Ronald Rudin's investigation of why different forms of tapping worked. Different forms of things like EFT and TFT tapping techniques, why they worked. Excuse me 1 second, I'm just going to turn my thermostat down. I don't want the heater coming on making a lot of extraneous noise. So Dr. Rudin discovered that, when you tap, you get on the face and certain other places that you get delta waves. And delta waves are the secret sauce and why things change. So he created this havening techniques. I didn't know about that at the time, but I had known about tapping, and it never had really worked for me. So I was skeptical about this thing that my friend was telling me about, but he was so persuasive and said, no, this is different. This is amazing. You got to see it. You got to at least see it. You got to see it in action. So I went to this demonstration, and Paul McKenna, and I part of the other reason I probably went is because I knew Paul. I met Paul McKenna in previous times in our lives, because we're both NLP trainers and stuff. Paul McKenna is a fairly famous hypnotist from England. He was in town doing a Broadway hypnosis show, and that's how he met Dr. Rudin in the first place. At any rate, I went to this demonstration, and full of skepticism, fully convinced I was going to leave there saying, yeah, not for me. But I saw this demonstration where this woman had been in 9/11. She'd been in the buildings, She was in the World Trade Centers getting money out of an ATM in the lobby, and she was 8.5 months pregnant, so not particularly mobile. And suddenly, the world changed. The plane hit, boom, everything was different. And so Paul, in this demonstration, said to her, so tell me what happened on 9/11. And she was like instantly back in the building. She was fully associated. It's like, well, I'm standing at the ATM and button this, and just this recurring thing. He says, okay, stop, clear your mind. I would like you to be walking on the beach. And he starts, stroking your arms and sort of directing your attention to, like, you're walking on a beach now. Just count your footsteps as you walk along the beach, from 1, 2, go ahead, count on up to 20. And she's like, doing these things, following these different directions while he's stroking her arms. And to my shock and amazement, within about 10 minutes, and literally it was not much more than 10 minutes. It was 11 minutes, 12 minutes. Okay. But it was not long at all. She was very, very calm. So if the first thing had been a 10 on a scale of 0 to 10, she was like 0. In fact, that's, I think, the number she gave it when he asked her, what are you feeling now? And she said, 0. So he says, okay, so now that we've gotten it down to 0, tell me what happened on 9/11. And she was like, well, I remember I was at an ATM, and she's pointing like over there, as if this picture that she was inside of, she was in the building a few minutes ago. Now this picture is over there, and she's looking at it from a distance, right? This is the kind of submodality change we've tried to do for years in NLP. We do in NLP, but it just like happened spontaneously, instantaneously. And it was like, she was calm as anything. And the next day she was back. She was not taking the course, but she was, invited to stay since she'd done this demonstration. So she was watching it. And somebody asked her later, said, so how are you doing? That's a pretty amazing demonstration. How do you feel about 9/11? She said, yeah, that was a really bad day. Very different situation than she had been previously. So I just thought to myself, okay, I don't know what the hell this is, but I got to find out. I got to learn from it. And I was just so impressed with Dr. Rudin, Dr. Ronald Rudin, who is a MD and PhD in organic chemistry, who, created this thing, and how he was so painstaking in his research to find out like really why it worked. And he spent, I don't know how many years, 6, 7, 8 years doing this research before he told anybody besides his twin brother, Steve, about it. But, really finding out that, stroking the arms, stroking the face, create delta waves, and that changes the whole brain chemistry. It just is such an amazing thing. So, yeah, I didn't set out to discover anything new. I was fine. doing NLP. I've been very successful with NLP and hypnosis over the years. I didn't need anything new. I was great. But when I saw this in action, I said, okay, well, how can I say no? This is so amazingly effective. And I'm really glad that I did, because it enhances my NLP practice tenfold. If I didn't even know that was possible, but it does. It enhances the NLP and it enhances hypnosis. And sometimes I get calls, just people who want havening, because they get people who have had havening or whatever. So I do havening straight, if you will, straight havening with folks if they ask for it. But also, NLP also informs my havening practice as much as havening informs my NLP practice.
So curiously, one of the questions people ask me is, does it really stick?
Uh-huh. So
if you don't mind, I'll give a little testimonial about that.
Yeah, please. I'll make you bigger.
Okay. So I have permission from Elena Kindler, who is now a trainer of trainers.
Oh, did we mention that Elena Kindler is the person in my story?
It's okay. I have permission.
She's the woman who was in 9/11. She has become a havening trainer.
She has become a trainer of trainers.
She is the trainer of trainers, yes.
Leaving a career in the securities industry as a lawyer. And I have been a facilitator on several of her trainings for practitioner training. And I think it was 2 years ago. So that demonstration that you saw was, I think, in 2013.
Okay.
And I think it was 2023. We were having a fall training, and it was the second or third day. And we get onto our Zoom training call, and somebody says to Elena, shall we pause for a moment of silence? And she looks around kind of like, why? And she all of a sudden realizes, oh my gosh, that's why my phone was blowing up with messages this morning. 9/11, 10 years later, and she had forgotten. And it was even a blue sky day, which usually is another trigger. So when people ask me that question, does it stick? I say, well, I think so.
Yeah.
You might even not remember important anniversaries because they're not emotionally up on top.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for that. I didn't really know that story. That's really interesting. And I didn't know that I really had permission to
Yeah.
you know, to say that, yeah, this is the woman's name.
Yeah. Elena tells her stories repeatedly in her trainings, and I have permission to share because I've asked her. So
yeah.
Amazing.
And for me, for my money, from my perspective as an NLP trainer, it is an enhancement of that. It doesn't replace NLP. It doesn't, I don't do, I rarely do havening instead of NLP, almost never, honestly, because NLP is a way of thinking and a way of approaching just the structure of reality. So it's hard for me to not do NLP. It's just like, how can I not do that? So I'm always, if you will, doing NLP, even though when I'm doing, straight havening, but it really friggin' works. It's kind of like when I used to do NLP exclusively and people would come to me for a phobia situation, I would know like 9 times out of 10, I would have no problem. But there was always that 1 time out of 10 that was kind of a problem for whatever reason. And now I just, if somebody comes to me for a phobia, it's like, have a seat, it's like we can do this. And frankly, the great thing about it is if havening doesn't work, I can do the NLP phobia cure. It's just, I have more than one tool, and it's always useful to have more than one tool. If what you're doing isn't working, try something else.
So there are times where you find havening doesn't work and you go onto something else.
Yeah. It has happened. That havening doesn't work or NLP doesn't work, so I switched to havening one way or the other. But yeah, interestingly, prior to COVID, back in 2013 when Paul did that demonstration with Elena, he did the havening touch on her. He was reaching over and stroking her shoulders. That's the way it was done up until COVID. Pretty much all the time, not exclusively, but because some people experimented with, virtual havening where a person does havening for themselves. And sometimes certain people who became havening practitioners were also licensed psychotherapists or whatever. So they couldn't legally touch their patients, their clients. So they would, sit in the room and say, okay, do this with yourself, stroke your arm, stroke your face, while they facilitated, the psycho part, the talking part of the psychosensory therapy called havening. So there was some of that, but for the most part, it was done with a practitioner, stroking the arms, doing the havening touch for the client. Havening hits, suddenly it's all online, right? So we discover that it works 99%, 98%, maybe 95% as well. When a person does this for themselves, if you do it for yourself, you still are getting the delta waves. It may not, I think it's more effective when a person does it in person because it's like getting a massage, I think, sort of. If you have a muscle cramp, you can rub it out, you can massage yourself, but it's a lot more effective most times for a massage therapist to do that work for you while you just relax and sit in the massage chair or lie back on the massage table. It's better for them, for them to do it. I think it's true for havening as well for the most part.
In most cases, yes. And then because I was a remote learner, I had the gift of, you were doing practice groups remotely. So
yeah.
So before COVID hit, I was doing havening remotely, and it was really good to know how empowering it is for the client. And, that's one of the things you're doing as a life coach, as a coach, is empowering your clients. So that was a huge benefit to have be an international community where there were people in the UK saying, come and practice with me. And people in New York saying, come and practice with us, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Also, because so many people come to Havening for trauma, which is different than probably your life coaching business, essential coaching for life coaching, is people come who are traumatized and they don't want to be touched.
Right.
So early on, I had clients who wanted to do it themselves, even in the same room. And it is true that there's a dual attunement that you get when you're in the same room with people, but the flexibility of Havening seems pretty phenomenal. And I suspect that that's true for your other skill sets also, NLP and hypnosis.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I do hypnosis over Zoom. I do. Since I've been living up in this little country home of mine since COVID. We have an apartment in Brooklyn as well, but my office in New York closed. I didn't have a choice in that matter. It closed beneath me, if you will. I had to go down that one day, rent a truck, and get all my stuff out of there. So I don't really have a place to work in New York anymore. I still have an apartment there. My wife spends a lot of time there, but yeah, it's usually better if it's in person. Hypnosis is better in person. NLP is better in person. You can see a lot more of the body language and stuff, and attune more easily with the breathing and physiology of the person that you're in the same room with. I think there's a lot of benefit in that for sure. And it sure is convenient to, if somebody is in Connecticut, to not have to drive to Brooklyn or Stone Ridge or whatever to have a session. Just, tune in on Zoom. I will say, however, excuse me, it's a little dependent on Wi-Fi connectivity. If a person's trying to do a Havening session on the phone and they're holding the phone and they're
it doesn't work so well. No, I ask people to be on a hands-free, preferably computer device. It is a lot safer, and hopefully I don't need Starlink. Maybe you might. I don't know.
No, I don't.
So what do you think is the most essential part of the Havening techniques to fit in with the essential coaching skills, if that's
you're
thinking?
Wow, gosh, who asked you to be here? Well, that's a hard question, Feather.
Well, Dr. Ronald Rudin likes to use the word remarkable. So what would you say is the most remarkable thing? I think you might have already given a testimony about that, but just maybe in terms of being a coach and having these other skills, what's the most remarkable thing for you?
Well, let me just not answer your question directly, but say this about that. Because long time ago, I've forgotten who exactly it was. Maybe it was somebody at a Tony Robbins event. I was a master trainer for Tony Robbins for 10 years, and he had a lot of different people in to talk about different things at different parts. Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad. All kinds of different experts, amazing people. It was just an amazing period of time to, really meet a lot of fascinating people. Perhaps no more amazing. I met Richard Bandler that way. I met Robert Dilts that way. I met Dave Dobson that way through Tony Robbins. But somebody just once said that it's really useful to have more than one stream of income. To have not just say I am a this, but you say I'm a this and I'm a this and I'm a this and I'm a this. I'm a coach. I am an NLP practitioner. I'm a Havening practitioner. I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm an author. I'm a podcaster. I'm a bunch of different things. I teach piano lessons occasionally, not very much anymore, but I used to do that. So it's multiple streams of income, if you will. And so it's interesting to me that when most people come to me for coaching, and they're usually high achievers, people who are doing very well, or getting to the point where they're going to be doing very well soon, so they're business people, they're coaches in their own right or whatever. They're not looking to be fixed. They don't have a problem per se. They don't have any sort of phobia or trauma or whatever that they're. Everyone has had traumas in their lives, but that's not the thing that they're coming for. They're not coming to me for that. But Havening has so many broad applications. there's, I kind of, I don't know if it's facetiously is the right word, but I kind of oversimplify it and say there's the havening that takes away the bad shit, and there's havening that puts in the good shit. That's kind of my Brooklyn way of describing stuff. Pardon my French, but there's the havening to get rid of those traumatic events, like we did with Elena, or Paul did with Elena. That you have this encoded trauma, and havening can help remove the AMPA receptors that have been encoded, have been phosphorylated into the lateral amygdala that are stuck there. Havening takes them away. It does. It's an amazing thing. And there's taking away the bad shit, but putting in the good shit. It's also the amygdala is really right next door, to the hippocampus, where you create new memories. New memories, the memory consolidation process happens often in dream time, when you're in a delta state and you're visualizing things in a dream, and you're telling yourself things in a dream, and so that's how memory consolidation happens. So basically, havening allows us to hack into our brain's computer, so the memory consolidation system, because we create delta waves with the havening touch. So we're putting ourselves in delta. We're positively visualizing, same as a dream, putting in the dream that we want to remember as a fact. So we're visualizing, we're talking to ourselves, we're giving ourselves positive affirmations, so it really helps to have the brain go like, yeah, that's right. That's real. I remember that. It's a reality. So I am going to be successful. I am successful already. I can move to the next level. I'm there already. It feels like a reality. So havening is a great tool for anybody, and particularly, people who are wanting to move to another thing, put in some good stuff into their lives, into their brains, into their reality. It's a remarkable tool for all those levels, whether I'm doing, coaching for an executive level, C-suite type of coaching, or whether I'm doing, people who have some traumas they need to work on, doing hypnosis, doing NLP, all those sorts of things. Havening just is a great tool for all those things.
It sounds like it's essential to your coaching skills because it is a way of neuro programming, the plasticity that it allows you to access into the brain. So you can have neurogenesis and neuroplasticity and the memory reconsolidation, and you can rely upon it. So it become, I feel like it does become an essential skill.
I'm sold. It is essential for me. I mean, I do it with almost, not everyone, but almost every client that I work with. I do at some point or another. Coaches, I'm usually with coaches, like I have a 3-month minimum with my coaching practice. So, people who are with me in coaching usually are with me for a while, 3 months, 6 months, a year. I've had some coaches with me for multiple years. And that's great. But we still do havening, not every session, obviously, but we still do it, and they do it for themselves. I do it for myself on a daily basis. So it is kind of an essential skill. I started the Essential Skills podcast, and the reason my website is called the Essential Coaching Skills, in a way to find things. I was also always puzzled by people who got certified in coaching who didn't know how to do like very simple NLP things like the meta model, just to ask questions like, well, how specifically do you mean that? Some meta model questions seem to be absolutely essential skills. You couldn't do coaching without them, is what I was thinking, which is why I started this. Like, well, we need to focus on the essential skills. And I never thought of havening as being an essential skill, but the way you're having me see it now today, Feather, thank you very much, is that, yeah, it is kind of essential. It is perhaps not as basic as, things like the meta model, but yeah, I do use it with almost everybody that I work with. So for me, I suppose it is an essential coaching skill.
Well, you just said it's a brain hack. It's biological.
Yeah. And by the way, that is really true. The fact of the matter is, when you do this thing, it's like an electric switch. If you throw an electric switch, electricity courses through these circuits and stuff happens.
Yeah.
Right. So when we do havening, This is, our bodies are electrical chemical. They are. Your brain, the human brain, is just this little mass of protoplasm, up between your skull. It doesn't see anything. It doesn't hear anything. It doesn't feel anything. It's encased in this thick skull, right? It doesn't see anything. It doesn't hear anything. Any sensation has to be transduced into an electrical chemical signal to get to the brain, so the brain can say, oh, I see that, through these optic nerve receptors that, that send the signal to our brain, and we transcode it, transmutate, whatever. There's a word. Transmute it. Yeah. So we see it, or we hear it, we decode it. This electrical signal gets decoded, and we hear it and we feel it. We say, oh, my arms are being touched. But when we do it in certain places, when we touch our face and we touch our arms, we get delta waves. That electrical signal comes to the brain as a delta wave. And a delta wave has certain properties. It releases oxytocin, it releases dopamine, it releases serotonin, it releases GABA. Those are lovely, as I call it, neuro cocktail, which downregulates the system, causes you to feel calmer, causes you to feel more centered, right? And does those other nice things as well. And it's just a biological fact. It happens. This is how your body, brain, body, mind works. So if you do this, you get delta waves. If you do this, you get delta waves. You do. And then, havening, they call it applied neuroscience. It's just like, how do you then, knowing that is happening, that you're getting these delta waves, you're getting those chemicals, how can you use that psychologically? So it's a psychosensory therapy. So it really does, to my mind, supercharge. It's like NLP on steroids, or hypnosis on steroids. It just makes it better because it adds that secret sauce. It just makes it better.
Yeah, it adds the biological keys to coding what you want.
Nice.
Yeah.
Why didn't I just say that?
Well, this is a conversation. I'm just reflecting back to you, right? I learned from you many times. Yeah. So what else do you want to tell us about essential coaching skills, NLP, hypnosis, and havening together? If there's anything else that you want to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably there's a lot more to say. I will just say this, when I teach classes, this is often where, if you've been in my online classes, this is the room where it happens. I usually have a whiteboard set up, and I teach Sleight of Mouth here. I teach NLP here. I teach hypnosis here. I have taught some havening courses during the COVID years online. I'll be doing one soon, kind of a hybrid course where it's in person, but it'll also be online. But I will just say this, coaching is an amazing thing. Coaching has, I think, when I first heard of coaching back in the 90s, I thought it would be a silly thing. I took a course from it just because I liked the guy who was teaching it, a guy named Thomas Leonard. Turned out he was the originator of coaching in the first place. And I was impressed with him and impressed with what he had to say, but I just never thought coaching would catch on. I really didn't.
It was on the phone.
It was on the phone. What I met him was in a seminar. He and I were both speakers at this thing called, I forgot what it's called, a number of P's, like PPP, powerful professionals. I don't know what it was. But
personal power was really big back then. Personal power.
It wasn't Tony's thing, but it was another event. Anyway, he was one of the speakers. I was one of the speakers. So I just heard him speak, and I thought, wow, that sounds weird and kind of interesting. Coaching on the phone. You just talk to people on the phone. It's like, wow. So I took his courses, coaching 1, 2, 3 and stuff like that, certified on the phone. It was a telephone call, and it was, whatever you called those back then, group calls. Amazing way to learn, but it was very interesting because most of the coaching was done on the phone. I've never met half my coaches. I've really, they're in Florida, they're in wherever they are, and Australia, they're all over the place. I've never actually met most of them
in person.
Yeah. I mean, I talk to them on the phone or on Zoom these days, all the time.
You're catching up with a lot of the people that you studied with in your podcast.
That's
Yeah,
true.
it's fascinating.
It is.
It's your journey. So how long have you been doing these podcasts now? Are we coming up on 5 years?
Probably. It's almost, we're hitting towards our 200th
Yeah.
episode. So
Congratulations.
yeah, cool, right? Yeah, and yeah, it is thrilling to me I've had amazing people on this podcast.
You
Yeah,
have.
truly remarkable people, including
I'm humbled to be
Frederick
here.
Windwalker has been on my podcast now. Yeah, but I've had Robert McKee was on my podcast. My storytelling idol, Robert McKee has been on this podcast. That's amazing. You know who he is, right? Robert McKee.
Tell me. Well,
Well, he was in some circles made famous in a movie called, oh gosh, no, I'm not going to remember it. Nicolas Cage was in it. Adaptation, I believe, is the title of the movie.
yeah.
And there was Nicolas Cage was a playwright in this movie who attended Robert McKee's story seminar. So Robert McKee has this seminar that he's taught for years called Story, and it's I think it's a 3-day seminar for playwrights and screenwriters, mostly screenwriters, I guess, but playwrights as well, story authors as well. But everybody takes this thing. It's an amazing 3 days. And the guy that depicted him in the movie was like very good, really amazing way of depicting him, because he's kind of a irascible character, kind of a gruff guy, but he's teaches it really, really well. But anyway, I asked through some channels if he would be on my podcast about storytelling, because I'm big into storytelling these days, and he agreed, and he's been on. So it's pretty cool. It's really pretty cool to be on this podcast, I will say.
Yeah. Speaking of storytelling, you've got a book out, right?
I do. Yes. Thank you very much. I do have a book out on storytelling. This is about havening today, but yeah, I do have a book on storytelling that I'm very proud of, The User's Guide to Storytelling.
And you have a couple of other books related to essential coaching skills. Yes.
I have this User's Guide to Sleight of Mouth, of course, which is one of the essential coaching skills that I teach. I teach Sleight of Mouth, I teach NLP, and I teach what I call Neo-Ericksonian Hypnosis, because a lot of what I learned about Ericksonian hypnosis was from his students like Stephen Gilligan and various other people who had various different ways of looking at Ericksonian hypnosis, but it was their different things. But also I learned a lot from Dave Dobson, who was not technically an Ericksonian at all. He met Erickson once, but he didn't learn from Erickson. He developed his own things separately. So they're very parallel things, and yet a little bit different as well. So I think it's just accurate for me to refer to it as Neo-Ericksonian hypnosis than Ericksonian per se.
Contemporary.
Yeah.
What's your vision for havening techniques for coaches and essential coaching skills? Do you have a vision?
Well, right now, so far, I've kept them separate. I teach havening certification courses as separate entities. And the 3 things that I teach in the Essential Coaching Skills platform are just those 3 that I mentioned: Sleight of Mouth, NLP, and Hypnosis. So I leave it up to people to integrate it for themselves. I don't think everybody wants to necessarily have those things necessarily. Maybe that'll change in the future. I don't have a vision for hypnosis. I'm sorry, for havening to become part of that platform, but who knows? Maybe. One of the things that I've also been impressed with by Dr. Ron and Dr. Steve Rudin is their desire to keep havening kind of clean, if you will, to have it be so that it's taught the same way by trainers all over the world. One of the crappy things, unfortunate things, very, very, very unfortunate things that happened with NLP is that it kind of got watered down or discombobulated. Different people really took it and went different directions. So if you look up NLP in Wikipedia as an example, it's listed as a pseudoscience. I think it's highly unfair, but inaccurate. NLP is fantastic and does wonderful things. And you can get certified in NLP in a few days. People teach NLP practitioner, like 5-day practitioner trainings, and that's just hogwash. in my opinion. So the havening guys, Doctors Rudin, have really kept it so that, to get certified in havening, there is a worldwide accepted certification process that you've got to go through from a certified havening trainer. And then we got to go through our paces to become a certified havening trainer. Elena's now the trainer of trainers, but she, runs a tight ship. You got to, know your stuff. There's science tests you got to pass. You got to, know the sections of the brain that we're dealing with here and how all this changes it.
There's a lot of pure steps to becoming a practitioner and a trainer, and a lot of pure science in it.
Yeah. No, it's true. Absolutely true. So, and they want to keep it that way. So, you can't get certified, by me differently than you're going to certified by Joe or certified by Elena or certified by you or whatever. This training is the training wherever you go in the world. So that's cool. And I really do appreciate that. So, so when I teach havening, it's within those protocols. I don't know if it really fit in Essential Coaching Skills as the platform of that or not. So I'm content for now to keep them as separate entities.
Some people say it's just a bolt-on, right?
Steve Rudin often likes to say that havening is a bolt-on to other things that you're already doing. So whether you're doing psychotherapy, whether you're doing hypnosis, whether you're doing whatever you're doing, havening bolts on very well to that and enhances it.
And it sounds like in your coaching experience, you might actually kind of agree with that. It's a secret sauce. You say secret sauce is how you like to describe it.
I do. I like that secret sauce metaphor. Yeah, for sure.
That's really good talking to you today, Doug.
Well, thanks for being here, Feather. I really appreciate you taking time. And you are a havening techniques practitioner. Where are you in Rhode Island?
I'm close to Rhode Island. I'm in Westport, Massachusetts, a stone's throw from Newport, as the crows fly over several bridges.
How good of an arm do you have to be to throw that stone to Newport?
Yeah, you have to have a good arm. And I work, I would say 90% online.
Okay.
And people will come to my office and have a few sessions with me, or one session, and then they'll ask, can we do it over Zoom?
Yeah. That's happened to me as well.
It happens frequently, and occasionally it works the other way around. Somebody who's far away will be in my neighborhood, and I'll find out, and I'll say, why don't you come by? And I love meeting with people in person, and I love doing trainings in person as well. But the online thing has so many benefits. So
yeah. So did you say Westport, Connecticut, or Westport, Massachusetts?
Oh, Westport, Massachusetts.
Oh, and that's near.
So I'm between the cities of New Bedford and Fall River, right off the highway.
Okay.
Easy to get to from those two places, and not very far from Providence, Rhode Island, but they don't have a good bridge right now.
Okay. And
have a lot of bridges because we have a lot of wind.
Feather Wind Wisdom is your website?
Feather Wind Wisdom is my website, yes. And I do call myself a coach and a neurosensory practitioner, because I figure between the havening and the hypnosis and the NLP, it's all neurosensory. It's psychosensory, but it's neurosensory. So I like neurosensory.
Cool. Love it.
That's how I identify myself. And I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to do this, because it's easier for me to answer questions with a real life person than it is just to talk to a computer. So I appreciate
you do a great job, and I listen to you often while I'm making breakfast.
Okay, good.
It's a good way to listen. So
it reminds me of a client I had once who I gave one of my sleep tapes to, so it could sleep. I used to sell a lot of CDs back in the day, but before that I sold tapes. So I gave her my sleep tape, and I saw her once a couple of years later. She said, I go to sleep with you every night. It's like, okay.
I could have said that at one time as well. Yeah, your hypnosis, your beach walk has been an essential part of my life at various times. So
sleep skill. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Feather. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.